So the Lizzie Bennet Diaries is a thing. It's one of a million adaptations of Pride and Prejudice. And no, I did not make a mistake while trying to name the Bridget Jones Diary movie. That is a terrible adaptation with a whiny main character. I said the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and I meant the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. Besides, this isn't even a movie. It's an online cross-platform web series. That's right, today I'm checking all the boxes. Talking about a book, that's also a movie, that's also a TV show miniseries, that's also a web series, and also at least one board game that I know of. I wonder if there's a Pride and Prejudice video game. I'm just gonna pretend that I didn't see that. To say Pride and Prejudice is popular and persistent, see what I did there, throughout the ages is an understatement. It's arguably the most famous of Jane Austen's work, standing above Sense and Sensibility and Emma. Though I prefer Sense and Sensibility, Persuasion is my favorite. I'm a pretty big Jane Austen fan. I first saw Pride and Prejudice as a play while I was in high school, then the 2005 movie with Keira Knightley, except Rosamund Pike was the real star. I suffered through the Bridget Jones Diary. I thought Elizabeth was supposed to be clever, not whiny. And then finally I came upon the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. There have been modern retellings, alternate versions, fantasy settings, and we can't forget that one time somebody thought it would be a good idea to put zombies in there. There are a million different adaptations of this story with their own variations and twists. Ooh, somebody should make an anime. I would watch the shit out of that. So if Pride and Prejudice has so many adaptations, and it's not even your favorite, why make a whole episode about the Lizzie Bennet Diaries? I could easily spend this time extolling the virtues of Persuasion. You know what, I might still do that. Because I want to talk about adaptation and characterization. The Lizzie Bennet Diaries is my favorite adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, and this has to do with the change in format of delivery and its modernization of setting. Both of these changes had drastic effects on the characters, which made them feel more realistic and relatable, particularly the Bennet sisters. And so today, I want to talk about the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. The show, for lack of a better term, was created when Hank Green, that's one of the Vlogbrothers and now famous everything doer, had the brilliant idea to adapt Pride and Prejudice into today's times and not weird fashion dead people's times and put it online for everyone to enjoy. He partnered with Bernie Sue to help him create the show, Jenny Powell to produce, and a whole team of creative writers to bring the characters to life. They've cast some really wonderful people who've gone on to do amazing things like Laura Spencer, Ashley Clements, Mary-Kate Wiles, and Daniel Vincent Gord. The show had an incredibly low budget as far as production go, but this only served to shape the creativity of the cast and crew. As the name suggests, the show was a kind of diary for Lizzie. It was shot as though Lizzie was completing a series of vlogs about her life and family that were then uploaded to YouTube. As a result, most of what is shown to the audience is only a single room as Lizzie and whomever she's with retells or talks about the events of her life, sometimes in costume. The results are hilarious, heartwarming, dramatic, traumatic, and sometimes so sappy it's like watching some K-drama shit, which incidentally is exactly my kind of shit. Despite this vlog style of filming, the show was incredibly ambitious, especially with such a low budget. The goal was to tell the story of Pride and Prejudice, but in modern times, with 2 videos a week for a whole year. Now the videos were only about 5 to 10 minutes on average, but where the show really got hardcore was that it wasn't just Lizzie uploading. It wasn't even just a YouTube. Every character in the show that was tech savvy was given an online presence, from Lizzie's Facebook page with all of her educational background to Jane's Pinterest account where she shared her fashion ideas, to characters tweeting at each other. Every character's profiles, interests, and hobbies were carefully curated, and then each of those accounts were updated in real time based on the events that were going on in the story. This approach to a cross-media inter-platform online web vlog mashup to storytelling allowed audiences to watch the main channel of Lizzie's videos, as well as Lydia's, Mariah Lou's, Collins & Collins, and the Domino trial run. Audiences could then follow any of the characters seen or mentioned in any of those videos on any of their various social media outlets and see in real time when a character leaves town via Twitter and how other characters deal with that heartbreak by posting sad puppies on Pinterest. And then they could hear Lizzie talk about it in a video 2 days later. That is a lot of content to manage. There are 100 videos from just Lizzie's original diaries. That doesn't include any of the bonus content like Q&As. A lot of work went into this monster production, which was impressive because this went on from 2012 all the way to 2013. All of that hard work paid off though, because the show was the first ever digital series to win an Emmy Award, and yes, that is a big deal. The show and its crew garnered several accolades and awards for their hard work, not only for the cross-platform aspect of the show, but for its real-time storytelling quality. The story, of course, is pretty timeless, but the updated setting allowed for the vlogging format, which had become so familiar on YouTube, combined with outstanding character writing and acting, and made the story fun and engaging. Watching these characters felt like watching your friends because, hey, you were actually friends with them on Facebook. In case you haven't read the book or you don't want to spoil the differences between the book and the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, this is your warning. Lizzie starts a vlog and talks about her old-fashioned, born and bred Southern sensibilities mother who is worried about her 3, not 5, daughters finding husbands to make them happy. Lizzie, her older sister Jane, and her younger sister Lydia live with their parents in an undisclosed small town in Northern California. They come across a single med student named Bing Lee. Jane promptly begins to fall in love with him, to Lizzie's dismay, as she is determined to hate Bing's best friend, William Darcy. As the story progresses, we see Lizzie deal with her sister's heartbreak, her opinions of the world and others challenged, and overcome her own Pride and Prejudice until she finds a way to connect with people that she's alienated. She realizes that Darcy, while admittedly shy and awkward, is not a stuck-up hipster, but a reserved and kind-hearted introvert who is unfamiliar with the ways of the Bennet sisters. There are some really big deviations from the original book, but suffice to say that the overall story is basically the same. The smaller changes in the story are worth pointing out, as these are the minutiae of how the story is told. Because the Lizzie Bennet Diaries are told through new media, a lot of the story is narrated to us after the fact rather than in third person during the action from Lizzie's perspective like they are in the book.
I forget nothing.
This doesn't change the story drastically in any way, but it does mean that certain characters are altered significantly, which results in something really neat. Mr. and Mrs. Bennet are often shown affecting the plot in the book. In the show, these two characters never appear on screen. This might be problematic for the forward momentum of the plot. Mrs. Bennet specifically is often the primary instigator of conflict for Elizabeth in the book because of her irrational drive to find husbands for her daughters. This actually works out well for the show, because we still get the effects of what her mother does.
My mom gave each of us one of these last Christmas. I have yet to wear it. Ever.
But now we have the added bonus of seeing how Mrs. Bennet's actions are seen through how the Bennet sisters play Mrs. Bennet when they dress up as her. From a narrative perspective, we might say that Mrs. Bennet has lost her voice because her actions are all off screen. We only see the effects of them told secondhand to us. But I think this actually serves to bolster Lizzie's character, as she often portrays her mother in a particular way.
I will bake a pie, let him know about our 3 eligible young daughters who are in desperate need of a rich, single man.
This plays into the way that Lizzie thinks she is right about everything, as we only see these two characters through Lizzie and to a lesser degree Charlotte, Jane, and Lydia's portrayals of them. We know that Lizzie is prejudiced, but when she dramatizes her mother, her version is clouded by her own bias.
Lizzie, who's that dancing with Bing Lee, the rich new neighbor? It's your eldest, most perfect daughter, Jane. This is the happiest day of my life. What about the day you married Dad, or the days your 3 daughters were born? Nope, it's today!
Which serves the theme of the story and Lizzie's character arc. This also benefits the characters that do appear on screen, because we the audience are able to see how the relationships between on-screen characters develop and change, because the majority of screen time is taken up by their interactions and discussions of events. This allows for the natural conveyance of those relationships, which shows how close the Bennet sisters in particular are. This is something I think the book missed out on. It's implied that Jane and Lizzie are close, but for most of the book, that is only told to us through Lizzie's thoughts rather than by their actual spending time together. The other change the format inflicts on the story is how interactive Lizzie is with the world. The show takes great pains to make sure that the forms of new media and digital platforms are integrated into the narrative. Lizzie's video diaries, while not being treated as a show per se, are understood to be a real entity that people are watching within the show's own universe. Many characters also acknowledge the videos and their effects on the internet and wider world. The videos themselves, as we the audience watch them, become more popular, and therefore Lizzie has to deal with audiences wanting to hear more about her life. Lizzie also has to contend with the fact that the people she has talked about might eventually hear about all the things she has said about them on her videos. Darcy! But YouTube is also a format that allows participation, which means that the audience and creators, in this case the characters, also interact with each other, and so the audience feels like they get to know the people involved. Mainly with Lizzie, who we see and follow the most, but also with Jane and Lydia's cat Kitty, who has way more followers than me. The fact that the vlog is treated as real and the effects and impact the videos have on the lives of the characters is unprecedented, and it leads into the next thing that the Lizzie Bennet Diaries does so well, and that is how it has updated and modernized itself, and especially its characters. There are schools of thought relating to Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Some people read the whole tone of the story as mildly sarcastic. When read this way, even the opening line gives off a different kind of vibe.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife.
This statement seems to be pretty outlandish. In the book, Elizabeth promises to only marry for love and not because she's a woman and that is what she will need to do to survive in her world. That's pretty feminist. For the time. So in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, the show is in modern times, and therefore the Bennet sisters do not need to get married in order to avoid destitution, because, women are allowed to do actual shit now. So all three sisters have things they aspire to, things outside of finding husbands. Jane is a fashion designer who's already finished school. Lizzie is finishing her master's in new media and mass communications, hence the vlogs as a school project. And Lydia is doing her associate degree at a local community college. Yay for higher education! These new goals are also offset with new obstacles, such as the advent of millennials that are forced to live at home with their parents because they can't afford to live anywhere else, coupled with their parents' financial situation and the addition of their mother's traditional southern upbringing, and the want for a rich husband is still present in their lives, but all three of them deal with it in a much more modern way. Jane smiles and humors her mother, Lizzie debates, researches, and rebels, and Lydia parties and makes out with any hot guy she can find.
I'm gonna bang the out of her.
The three Bennet sisters are modern ladies that we connect with by watching their interactions with each other and by interacting with them ourselves. And the biggest reason the format and modernization make the Lizzie Bennet Diaries the best is in the show's treatment of Lydia. Throughout the years of enjoyment of the book and its various adaptations, there has always been a malignment of Lydia, what I call the vilification of one Lydia Bennet. It's not hard to understand why. In the original story, Lydia runs away with the dreaded Mr. Wickham. Of course, this is scandalous because if they're not married, then she's basically a ruined and sullied young woman, which would bring dishonor to all of her sisters as tainted or soiled because their sister is presumed to have sex out of wedlock. Now, during Jane Austen's time, this really would have ruined the girls. This is the way society saw young women and treated them, and Elizabeth herself is disgusted by her sister's uncaring and ignorant attitude towards the whole affair, and rightly so. Lydia very nearly fucked up the whole family and doesn't seem to give two shits, so I guess that's fine if you were born in Regency-era England and your sister goes off with some strange man. But nowadays, this is what we call slut-shaming, and it's super not okay. If a young woman wants to sleep with someone and she's not married to them, we call that a Friday night, or better yet, none of your fucking business. And this is where the Lizzie Bennet Diaries gets Lydia so right, in the modern sense. The entire time that the audience sees and interacts with Lydia, she is way over the top, and it's very entertaining to watch. We also see how she interacts with her sister, and she feels very real. They annoy each other.
I need more friends. And less sisters.
Make each other laugh and know exactly how to hurt each other when they lash out, but they always love each other. To have Lydia be slut-shamed for who she chooses to have sex with or run away with would have really ruined what the show was building on in regard to the relationships of the Bennet sisters and the point of the story about women in modern day. Instead, Lizzie is prejudiced about her sister and how energetic and wild she presents herself. Eventually, Lydia meets George Wickham, who uses Lydia's loneliness and vulnerability against her while her sisters are away. In the end, Lydia is not sullied or slut-shamed, she is a victim of an asshole. From a narrative standpoint, the audience is able to sympathize with Lydia. Perhaps she made a mistake, but what happened to her was not her fault. There's a saying in writing that you have to protect your characters. What is meant by this is that characters should come across as human, and therefore they may do things that are uncharacteristic of them, but they won't go out of their way to do something that is wildly out of character or would actively hurt themselves or others if that's not already been established as part of their character. People don't generally try to hurt themselves or others, and it's important to write characters that feel like real people who protect themselves. Therefore, Lydia, as a sympathetic and complex character in the show, is unlike her selfish and ignorant book counterpart. She made a mistake, and the show takes time to show that and handles it really well. For their part, Jane and Lizzie want to love their sister and forgive her, and don't blame her one bit, and it's really heartwarming and gratifying to see sisters come together like this. Actually, this was kind of a stroke of genius because those who really liked this version of Lydia, myself included, didn't have to worry about her being vilified. And we didn't have to worry about the other Bennet sisters slut-shaming their sister and how that might alter our feelings about Lizzie and Jane as characters. Instead, Lydia is hurt by George, but she's still the Lydia we want to love. And it makes George out to be an even bigger dickweed than he is in the book. It also makes Darcy's save that much more satisfying because he helps Lydia more than anyone else in the family, rather than saving the family in spite of her. The real-time cross-platform interactive format, the modernization and the effects this has on the characters, and specifically how awesome Lydia and the treatment of her in this world are all facets of what makes this my absolute favorite version of Pride and Prejudice, and that is why you should watch the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. You really should just sit down and binge the whole playlist on YouTube. There's a reason some of those videos have millions of hits. I cannot stress how real the characters feel and how heartbreaking some of the drama feels. It's also really funny at times. Some of the one-liners that Lizzie pulls out range from funny referential humor to snarky gut-busting hilarity to terrible cringe-inducing soapiness, and I loved it all. I was really glad that I caught it during its original run in 2013, but I still go back and watch it all the time. I even have the book that's based on the show. And its sequel. Hey, thanks so much for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to hit that like button with as much prejudice as you can muster. Let me know what your thoughts on the Lizzie Bennet Diaries were if you've ever seen it before, and if you haven't, go and check it out. I cannot recommend it highly enough. And then come back here and tell me about it. If you're not into modern adaptations but still like Jane Austen, I highly recommend this new show called Bridgerton on Netflix. It's definitely influenced by that Jane Austen era, but with more of a modern approach and sensibility in regards to how it shows women in that era. Don't forget to check out some of the other awesome videos right here on Cinemaster's Ultimate Timeline.